Hi everyone, this is Mary and today I'm going to show you how to make this pillowcase. It's super easy to make and a great beginner project for both kids and adults. So go ahead and grab your materials and let's get started. To make this pillowcase, you'll need 1 yard of your main fabric and half a yard of your accent fabric, plus pins, fabric scissors, a ruler, and I like to use a washable marker to draw out my lines before I cut. You'll also need a sewing machine and thread. First, we're going to cut out our fabric. So I have my main fabric here and it's folded in half like I bought it at the store. And I'm going to cut it down to 27 inches long. So I'm using my ruler and marker to mark this line and then I'm going to cut along it. Now that that's cut out, I'm going to cut the width down to 21 inches. So when it's unfolded, it'll be 42 inches wide. Now I'm going to repeat the same steps and cut my accent fabric down to 11 inches tall. And now I'm going to measure 21 inches here and then go ahead and cut that so that my fabric will be 11 by 42 inches when it's unfolded. Now that my fabrics are cut, I want to unfold them and match them up along the longest side with the right sides of my fabric touching. The right side is the brighter side of your fabric that you want to show on the outside. Once my fabric is lined up, I'm going to pin all along this edge. To pin, poke your pin through both layers of fabric from the front, then bring it back up a little ways down, like this. You want to make sure that your pins aren't too far apart. I find that putting one hand in between each pin is the perfect distance. Now that all my pins are in, it's time to sew straight along this edge. Over at my sewing machine, I want to sew this seam with a 3/8 inch seam allowance, so I'm going to line it up with the edge of my presser foot and keep the edge of my fabric right here the whole way down. My rule while sewing is to keep 2 eyes and 2 hands on my fabric while my machine is going. So I'm going to put my left hand up here, and my right hand is holding my fabric loosely below my machine. And I'm using my hands to steer my fabric straight into the machine. The machine wants to sew straight, so there's not a whole lot of work to do. You don't need to push or pull. So I'm going to start with a back stitch, so a couple stitches forward, then stop and hit my back stitch button and go backwards a couple stitches and then keep going forward. I want to stop and pull out a pin before it reaches my presser foot. Now I'm going to speed my video up, but sewing is not a race, so take your time and make sure you stop to take out your pins. Now that our seam is sewn, lay your fabric out on a flat surface with the right side facing up. We're going to do what's called the burrito method and roll our main fabric up. Once we get to the top, we want to fold the main fabric up so that the seam that we just sewed is laying flat and our rolled up fabric is right in the middle of that accent fabric. Then fold the accent fabric down and match it up with the seam that we just sewed. Now it's time to pin again. And now it's time to sew along this seam. Same rules apply for this seam. We're going to line our fabric up with the presser foot, take our time, and stop to remove our pins before they get to the presser foot. Once our seam is sewn, we're going to turn the whole thing right side out by pulling our main fabric out from in between the tube of our accent fabric. And now we're going to bring our pillowcase over to our ironing board and press it flat right here along our seam. Now we're going to fold our pillowcase in half with the wrong sides together and then pin along the bottom and left side. Once our pins are in place, it's time to sew. When I get to the corner here, I'm going to slow down and stop about 3/8 of an inch away from the bottom and end with the needle down, and then lift my presser foot and turn the fabric to sew in the other direction. You can see it's just a little bit off, so I'm going to go back, stitch one more stitch, and then turn it and stitch along this side to complete the bottom of my pillowcase. Now we're going to trim our seam allowance by cutting right down the middle here between the edge of our fabric and our stitches. Make sure you're taking your time here because we don't want to cut through that stitch line. When you get to the corner, you're going to want to cut diagonally, careful not to go through the stitches, to trim your seam allowance. Once your seam allowances are trimmed, go ahead and turn your pillowcase inside out and then press the seams flat. Once our seams are pressed, we're going to go ahead and sew the bottom and side of our pillowcase again, just like we did before. Now our pillowcase is complete, so go ahead and turn it right side out and insert a pillow. And that's how you make a pillowcase. Thank you so much for watching. I can't wait to see what you make.